All right, today we are diving into a really dense and frankly provocative document. It's a forensic audit that tries to put a price tag on our legal systems over the last 1,700 years. Yeah, it's a heavy topic and it's got some numbers that will absolutely blow your mind. So let's just get right into the huge question this whole thing is built around.
So the document we're looking at really frames its entire investigation around this one fundamental question. It's asking us to kind of put aside everything we think we know about the rule of law and instead look at history through the eyes of a cold, detached financial auditor.
And right off the bat, the audit hits you with this number, $436 quadrillion. I mean, what even is that? According to the source, this is the grand total, adjusted for inflation, of what it calls juridical malfeasance since 325 AD. But what does that really mean? And how could anyone possibly come up with a figure that massive?
Well, to even begin to wrap our heads around a number that big, the document does something pretty bold. It makes a direct comparison that is, honestly, startling. It pits the cost of legal systems against the cost of all global warfare during that same period.
And when you see it laid out like this, it is just stark. The audit pulls together historical data and concludes that the maximum estimated death toll from legal systems, we're talking nearly 348 million people, is actually higher than the minimum estimated death toll from all wars combined. It's an incredible claim, right? So let's dig into how the source even begins to justify it.
So, you're probably asking, how on earth did they get these numbers? And that's where we have to look at their methodology. This thing doesn't read like a history book or a philosophy paper. It presents itself as a cold, hard forensic audit. Let's break down the framework they're using.
First off, the scope here is just huge. We're talking 1,700 years, starting way back in 325 AD with the formalization of church law and going all the way up to today. It's tracing a single thread through these totally different eras of legal power, from religious courts and king's decrees to colonial systems and modern legal doctrines.
Now, this next part is absolutely crucial to understanding their whole argument. They use the specific term legal fraud architecture. This is their phrase for what they see as a repeating pattern in history where legal tools are specifically engineered not for justice, but for control and for extracting wealth. And the source is really clear about the rules it set for itself. It claims to use zero emotional language, to back up every single claim with hard evidence, and to adjust every dollar amount to its 2024 equivalent. Basically, it's trying to present itself as pure, objective, data-driven analysis.
Okay, so that's the theory. Let's see how it actually plays out. We're going to look at 3 examples pulled straight from the audit, one from way back, one from the colonial era, and one from right now, to see this idea of a legal fraud architecture in action.
The audit kicks off its examples with the doctrine of discovery. Now, this was a series of decrees from the Pope in the 15th century that basically gave the legal green light for European colonization.
So here's how the audit breaks it down for us. The legal instrument? Papal bulls, these official decrees. The so-called legal fraud architecture? It was the creation of a legal fiction known as terra nullius, which literally means nobody's land. This simple legal idea effectively erased the land rights of every non-Christian on the planet with absolutely devastating results.
And that brings us to the human cost the audit ties to that legal fiction. It attributes a maximum of 100 million deaths to the collapse of indigenous populations in the Americas that followed, directly linking that outcome to this legal doctrine.
Then the audit jumps forward a bit into the corporate era. It looks at the legal charters that were given to companies like the East India Company. In this case, the legal instrument was the Royal Charter. The fraud architecture, as the source calls it, was the privatization of state authority. You're giving a private company the legal power to raise an army, to print money, to administer justice. It was a government unto itself, but with zero public accountability. And once again, we get to the human ledger. The audit connects a maximum of 55 million deaths to this corporate legal structure, mostly through horrific famines, like the Great Bengal famine that happened under the company's watch. Now, to show this isn't all just ancient history, the audit brings its analysis right into the modern U.S. legal system, and it hones in on the doctrine of qualified immunity. Here, the legal instruments aren't papal bulls or royal charters, they're Supreme Court rulings. The audit says the architecture here is a defense that wasn't created by lawmakers, but by judges themselves. And it shields government officials from being sued unless their actions violate a right that is clearly established. So what's the cost? The audit calculates a maximum of 1.8 million fatalities in the U.S. from police violence since this doctrine really took hold in 1967.
It argues that this legal shield systematically chips away at accountability for misconduct. So after laying out case after case, just like these, covering everything from banking laws to environmental regulations, the audit brings it all home to one final, pretty blunt conclusion. And this really gets to the heart of it. What they're arguing is that these huge tragedies, they aren't accidents. They're not bugs in the system. They're features. They're the predictable result of a legal technology that has been designed, again and again, for control and extraction, not for justice. And the source signs off with this incredibly powerful final statement, basically letting the numbers do all the talking. The data requires no further commentary. The ledger speaks with finality.
Which leaves us with one last big question to chew on. This whole document reframes the law, not as this noble set of ideals, but as a piece of technology. And if that's true, you have to ask yourself throughout history, who's been using that technology and what has it really been built to do? It's a heavy question for sure, based on a very heavy set of data. Thanks for joining this explainer.